Hey guys, this is the Avenge 44 doing a video on an EDH deck I have made. It's an ally EDH deck. The deck focuses on just playing a lot of allies, abusing their interactions, and trying to win the game. I'm just gonna go over a lot of the cards and all of them. Here we have Horde Notions, which is my commander. I chose this commander. There's a lot of 5-color generals out there, but I chose this one really because of the fact that he has a tribal effect, and I do play a lot of changes in this deck because of the nature of allies. So so he's really good. You know, if I can pull certain changes out of my deck that are useful, like Chameleon Colossus or something like that. He's also a 5/5 Trample, Haste, and Vigilance, which is not bad for 5 mana. So if you don't have anything else to play, you can beat face with 5/5. And we have Austere Command, which is a really good versatile card. Board wipes, it destroys artifacts, destroys enchantments. Recursion, which is really good for getting creatures out of the graveyard, and being able to trigger ally effect if you don't have one in your hand. Tao's Paladin, he's pretty self-explanatory. He allows your allies to get bigger and gives them lifelink. Glorious Anthem, it's just kind of there. It's a pump. Obliterate. This is kind of like at least in my opinion, it's a staple in any deck, any EDH deck that has white in it. So that's definitely good. This is one of my favorite allies. He basically allows you to get your allies through defenses. Especially in monocolor EDH decks that are tokens. Like your opponent has like 15 sapling tokens. He allows your allies to walk right over it. Curve Swamp is when I first built the deck, I thought that these changeling instances would allow me to trigger ally effects, but after playing a couple games, I realized that you only get to trigger the ally effects when I'm coming into play. So I'll probably at some point get rid of all these, get rid of this, and name this inversion because they don't trigger ally triggers. So there's better removal cards than these out there. Blade Master. Blade Master is not really that impressive in the deck, but he's an ally. He triggers ally effects, so he's in here. Same thing with Free Blade. He's not very impressive, but he has a turn 1 play, which there's not a whole lot of those in this deck. Of course, it's EDH, so you don't really need that many turn 1 plays. Reinforcements. This allows me to stay steadily having ally triggers by getting free guys from the graveyard. The only drawback is that I do not get fresh draws for free turns, but if they're good allies, then they're still good draws. We have Muldrift in the blue section. This is kind of a last minute addition I made like just a couple seconds ago because one of my cards I didn't own anymore, and I just added Muldrifter because he is an elemental, so he can be abused with Horde Notions for repeated abilities, and drawing 2 cards every couple turns is not that bad. Jorah Shifter, she's really good. She's a clone. It's like clones allies. She's a 2-mana clone, which is just really good. Pheromone Activist. This is one of the allies that can win you the game. I've been able to get massive triggers off allies and just mill a single opponent or even multiple opponents to death. Yeah, that sounds hard in EDH, but it works. See, clone, pretty. Yeah, I'm accidentally removing these cards from my deck list. I'll fix that later. Clone is basically just your clone. It's really copies the allies, so it's really good. Rite of Replication, very very good card for this deck, especially if you kicker it. If you kicker it, it usually means the game over if you time it right on the right ally. Lore Master. Lore Master is he's a draw engine, which is really good for allies. I've been able to draw like 5 or 6 cards a turn off this guy. The Arios is not really that impressive. He does allow your allies to fly over opponents and get some points in. We already talked about naming his version. The Occultist. He allows you to return. He allows you to steal creatures out of your opponent's graveyard, which seems pretty good, especially with some of the really good fatties that go into people's graveyards in this format. But I've never really actually drawn this guy in the game, so I haven't really tested it. I don't know exactly how good it is, but he still has a spot in the deck. Breaks in Arena, it's just a card draw, pretty standard stuff. The Agora Thief, she allows, she basically, some hand manipulation, art and destruction. Allows you to get rid of some nasty things your opponents might have in their hand. She's not really that impressive, but she does work. Knight's Dealings. Knight's Dealings is really a kind of underrated card I really like, and I try to add in any EDH deck I can. It basically allows me to, if I'm dealing damage to my opponent, it basically allows me to remove counters to search my deck. And searching your deck for creatures is always good. No matter how limited it is, it still allows you to get something. Wanderer. This guy is really good. He's a 5 mana ally, essentially that allows you to get any keyword abilities that the other creatures in your graveyard has. So he can get a lot of abilities. He can get first strike, flying, trample, a lot of different things. I haven't really set my deck up especially to abuse this guy, but he's there's still occasions where he gets pretty good creature cards. Diabolics is really good. This is another one of the game enders in the deck. There's only a few game enders, but he's definitely one of them. This guy can just straight out win the game if you get enough triggers at one time. Patriarch's Bidding. This card is like all-star in the deck. You play it late game after there's been several board wipes and you've lost a lot of allies, and you just basically, if you play this card late enough in the game with a big enough graveyard, you can basically win the game immediately. That's just how good it is. Here we are in the red section. Pyromancer. He's direct damage. He's a kill. He allows you to kill pesky creatures, especially if you have a good number of allies, and he also allows you to hit opponent in the face. He's really overcosting for what he does, but in EDH it's not that bad. You can generate enough mana to get him out. This guy, Grunts, is pretty lame. I don't really care for it. I might eventually take it out for something better, because it's just a 2/2 with haste for 5, and it does trigger ally effects, but I'm probably better off just putting the freaking ally dog in here or something, because this guy it's not that great. The Warlord. The Warlord basically plays a pump. He allows you to just pumps your allies better, and he pumps them permanently. He gives them counters instead of just normal +1/+1. He also does for each ally you control. So this guy stays on the board long enough, you can get a lot of tokens, counters. I mean, Scrapper. Scrapper is another one of the really important allies in this deck because of how many powerful artifacts get played in EDH. He allows you. He's basically a recurring method of destroying artifacts, and especially his ability to deal damage equal to the number of allies you control. Whenever you destroy artifact, it's really good. I've actually won games off of this guy. Basically, I've won a game by right of replication this guy and just destroying 20 artifacts that were on board and killing my opponents. Torn Marauder. He's a changeling, so he triggers ally abilities, and he also gets bigger whenever your opponent plays spells, which is really good. There's a lot of spells get thrown around the table in this format. Battle Slinger is basically she's a hasting ally that gives your allies +1, which is not that big of a deal, but if you play multiple allies in a turn, it does power up and allows you for some big swings. Here we are in the green section. Survivalist. He's a pretty simple ally. He's an early drop ally that triggers effects. Farseek. Farseek is very important to the deck because it allows you to search for 4 of your 5 colors, which is really important. I didn't put a whole lot of ramp in this deck and color fixing. I mean, the lands themselves do most of the color fixing, but this card is really useful. Especially if you get an early game. It's a horrible top deck, but it's good early game. The Druid is also another really good color fixing card, especially in this kind of deck. Where she can generate a ton of mana. The Archer basically allows you to just get rid of annoying flyers. There's not you can get rid of like dragons and stuff. A lot of big flyers that people play in this format. Basswood. Animus. I haven't really play tested this card enough. I never even draw it in my games to really know if it's worth playing. It's it can make one of your lands into a decent sized creature to attack, but that really doesn't sound too impressive in EDH. Chameleon Colossus, he's basically a big fatty, that triggers ally effects. He has protection from black, which is very important, which is very useful because there's a lot of good removal that has black in it. He also can double his attack power, so if you have a lot of allied triggers, well, if you have a lot of pump effects already on this guy and then you double his attack power, you could be hitting for a lot of damage, especially against mono black. That could probably swing the game in your favor. Turn Timber Ranger is another really strong ally. This guy is he's basically a walking token generator. He makes 2/2s, not 1/1s like most cards do, so it's really useful. He also gets counters put on himself whenever allies come into play, so he gets bigger, which allows which after a couple of triggers he gets out of lightning bolt range, he gets out of power of pheasant range. He becomes bigger, and he allows you to make 2/2s, which are really useful. All right, on to the artifacts. Brass Herald. Brass Herald is a lord, which is already decent enough, but he also has a ringleader type effect, which is an effect that allows you to look at all the top 4 creatures, or look at the top 4 cards of your deck and put all creatures of that type into your hand. So you basically can get, if you're lucky, you can get 2 or 3 artifact allies in your hand off of this guy. Most I've ever gotten is I think one or two maybe, but he does allow you to filter through your top 4 cards and get any creatures, any allies you got. And he has a 6 drop, which is kind of expensive, but he's worth it, I think. Sword of Mind Bodies is really just in there just because it's really good. Just because milling top 10 cards of opponent's deck is really useful. Unless they're playing Reanimation, that's actually bad then. Mimic Vat's really good in this deck. It's a really good card nonetheless, but it's even better in this type of deck because you can keep putting into play an ally that has a good come into play effect, which triggers all your other allies' effects, which just makes for some insanity, especially if it stays on the board, but most likely it won't. Darksteel Elgranite, this is just a kind of a commander staple. It's indestructible, so it can survive artifact wipes, and it gives you any color, which is just important for this kind of deck. Adaptive Automaton, he's a lord, that's really what he is. He's a cheap, effective lord that, because allies don't really have a true lord, so he takes that place. Uratani's Gente, I'm sure I said that wrong. This is just one of those really good cards, and it's banned in so many formats, so I just like to use it in EDH, so I have a reason to use it. You can gain life off it, you can kill creatures off of it. Everybody knows how good this card is. Basically, I have all the full cycle of talismans in here. I know I could probably be using something better or something else, like probably the guild signets are probably better than these, but I don't know. It's what I had in my collection, so I started using them. Lightning Greaves, is an EDH staple. It's haste and Mistral for 0 mana. Really good. Able to protect some of your really important creatures. Soul Ring, another EDH staple. Just it's 2 mana for one. It's 2 for 1 mana. Really good. Allows you to accelerate fast. Alright, let's talk about some of the lands here. Well, let's talk about Corn. Corn is basically here because he's a colorless planeswalker. I guess I could have added a lot of other planeswalkers, but I just felt that the rest of them weren't really that important. And this guy is easier to cast since he does cost 7 generic. He allows the exile card, he allows you to just exile permanents, which is really good. But his final ability is really good in this deck because he allows you to basically recast all your allies that you've had during the game and basically get all their triggers at one time, which I haven't actually got to do that yet, but the idea of it sounds really good. Grand Coliseum, it's just a 5 color land. Basically, you do lose a life off of it, but it gives you whatever color you need, so it's useful. Island, Glacial Fortress, pretty simple stuff. Marsh Flats, mountains, basically just a lot of dual lands, a lot of fetches. Well, not really a lot of fetches, but all the fetch I actually own in Marsh Flats, but Cave of Carlos, Battlefield Forge, Reliquary Tower is in here because it's just, you have to have it. Tectonic Edge is kind of a staple in these formats. That was actually Tectonic Express, but whatever. Yeah. Overgrown Tomb. Yep. So just basically, I didn't really put a whole lot of really like mathematical thought into the land base. I basically took every like 2-color land I own, put them in a deck, and then filled the rest with basic lands of even number. So yeah, I really didn't do a whole lot of calculation on what my curve was like and what colors I needed the most. But I've played like 6 games of this deck, and I've won probably like 5 of them or 4. So I mean, the curve's not. I didn't do that bad of a job on the curve and the color ratios because it does work. I've almost never had a problem getting a certain color land in this deck. So I would do a video on actual gameplay, but my computer's running slow at this point, and this video is already probably like 10 minutes long. So I'll just leave it at that. You guys can comment, see how you like the deck, or how you don't like it. I'm sure there'll be some of that. So thank you for listening.